Why, hello and welcome everybody. It is Pohx again. So today on this video, I kind of just want to explain the differences between like life and CI and kind of how you should know if you should transition to CI on your character and whatnot. And this is kind of like a beginner's tutorial into it because I don't ever play CI. In fact, I really don't like CI that much. And I want to kind of create this guide for people like myself who just don't really want to do it, but they kind of want to know if and when they should. Does that make sense? So let's start off with the basics. The reason why you would want to go CI on a life-based character, primarily focused on the right side of the tree, is because there is not as much life on the right side of the tree as there is on the left side of the tree. That's why you can see builds like Explosive Arrow that can obtain and acquire like 10,000 life, focusing on the left side of the tree. Now, when you're on the right side of the tree, again, like I said, you don't really have that luxury, so a lot of people decide to just go CI. Whereas you could spend 20 life points, 20, 30 life nodes and have 5k life. You could also spend 20, 30 ES nodes and have 12,000 energy shield, or even higher, 15k. Now, one thing to note is, in terms of the transition to CI, I'd say this is probably the most frequent question is, when do I go CI? If I'm leveling a character as hybrid, or if I'm just leveling a character in general, when is it time to transition to CI? So I personally, and for people who don't know what CI is as well, CI is a node called Chaos Inoculation, which turns your maximum life to 1, makes you immune to chaos damage, right? Now, please do note that a lot of bosses do hybrid damage such as they do a percentage of your physical is added as chaos, so you're not fully immune to a lot of things. It's just, a lot of it is mitigated. And then you get one of the only, I think the only node in the game actually, which is a multiplier to your energy shield. And this will scale greatly off, high energy shield pieces of gear, such as like 400 ES helmets with intel rolls, 700, 800 plus energy shield chest pieces, 500 energy shield shields. But let's talk about when you're kind of ready to go CI. So the way CI works is, one of the big downsides is you don't really have, and this actually isn't a downside, but you don't have the ability to just click a button and heal. You don't have, there's no such thing as an energy shield flask unless you're using some type of hybrid flask, but then you're not CI and then the video doesn't make sense. So before you go CI, there's a couple things you need to knock off. So number one is you need stun immunity. All of these status effects are based on your life. You have no HP, meaning you will get frozen, you will get stunned, etc. It goes off of the life you had before you were CI. So if you had, say 1500 HP before you spec'd CI, it would go off of your 1500 HP, which is nothing. Meaning almost everything in the game is going to stun you that does damage. So things like an Eye of Chayula are really good pieces of gear. There's also a ring called Valerium, which turns it so a percentage of the stun is affected by your energy shield instead. Definitely look into some uniques and see kind of what you want to play around with. Another big thing is status ailments such as being frozen and being shocked. You will get shocked all the time and you will get frozen all the time. As a beginner guide, I would recommend something like a Dream Fragments. A lot of people really hate this item because it's kind of like a wasted slot. I really don't think it's that bad, and this is why I say that. When you have a Dream Fragments and a Chayula on at the same time, you pretty much will never get stopped with your movement speed. You can't be frozen and you can't be stunned. So no matter what happens, your character's always moving. You can pretty much YOLO any box, you'll never get frozen, and you can run through any mobs and you won't get stunned, with the exception of getting, bear trapped or Vol Rain of Arrows, but that doesn't really happen unless it's, very rare occurrences. You also don't have to rely on your flasks. So if you don't have any flasks up, you still can't be frozen and you still can't be stunned. And I think those are really good complements to it. Also, the reason why I recommend things like this is because when you're rolling your flasks, you can't roll everything. Meaning, I have a curse removal, a bleed removal, and a shock removal, but there's no way I could have a remove freeze unless I started removing my unique flasks. So that's kind of one thing you need to really take into consideration. Ignite is something you don't have to be too scared of, but it's something you should pay attention to because energy shield regeneration can only apply if you're out of combat, with few exceptions to that rule, and that's kind of something you have to do your research on. So I'm going to give you an example of energy shield regeneration, or recovery. Essentially, if you take damage, and you're in combat, you can't regenerate. So, well, there's an invasion boss, I don't know why exactly he's here, but okay.
A horror from the past returns to cause pain in a place
Alright,
that it never caused.
so I'm taking damage now, right? I'm going to move away, my ES recharge will start. My ES recharge will continue, you can see it flickering because of Wicked Ward. So if I take damage here, you can see it popping now, and it's continuously healing in combat. Now, that's due to a couple things. That's kind of the ES recharge I set up myself with the way I wanted my build, which is my Zergle's Crank. You have a 20% chance that when you were to block, it'll instead proc your ES recharge. And what that means is, since I have the synergy between Wicked Ward, it'll apply my ES recharge for 4 seconds. Now that's something I would recommend for you. Before you go CI, you need to figure out how you're going to make your build work. Is it going to be off energy shield regeneration like, Essence Surge? Is it going to be based off of Leech with Ghost Reaver? Are you going to be playing a double totem build so you have like a front line to protect you? Are you playing a summoner? This is something that's really important, because if not, you're just going to constantly get poked at and you're going to die. And if you can't regen your ES, what's the point of having 15,000 if you're constantly sitting at 5k? There isn't. In terms of actually swapping over, once you figure out these things, I would say like 7,000 is kind of a good amount. It's really not that hard to acquire 7k. For example, I'm using a Chayula, it doesn't give me any ES. I'm using a Dream Fragments, it doesn't give me any ES. I'm using a Staff instead of a Shield. My Staff gives me 89 ES. And I'm using a Beast Fur Shawl Regalia, which is essentially 550 ES. You can buy a 550 ES chess piece for like 2 Chaos in the current Hardcore Breach League. So it's really not too hard to get your ES this high. Once you get all those things kind of out of the way, you should honestly kind of have a better idea of how you want to go to CI. Now, the step after CI is also low life. Low life is kind of something separate, where basically you reserve a percentage of your health to get a multiplier on spell damage, and this is kind of a more endgame variant if you choose to maximize your damage, essentially. Now, one of the last things to do is again explaining the reason for going basically CI over life. On the right side of the tree, just to go over it again, there's not too much life nodes, so if you want to get a higher effective life pool, it's typically better to go energy shield based, with few exceptions. On the left side of the tree, you can get a ton of HP, so you don't really have to worry that much. But hybrid is always something that's kind of odd, because when you play a hybrid build, you're going to scale energy shield, and you're also going to scale life. But you are now susceptible to chaos damage, so you need to build for an extra resistance. In terms of when you should swap off from hybrid, not every build swaps off of hybrid. So for example, summoners don't really go low life unless you're using a Shavs, because they don't need multiplier for spell damage. So instead, they can just reserve 50% of their life and be like the half-life build. And they have like, 8,000 ES with 1k HP with max chaos resistance, and for the most part, they're okay. So not every build has to go into this direction. It's just an option. Anyway, I hope this helped you guys out. If you want to know specifically for me, again, I didn't transition to CI until I was like mid-80s, and I waited all the way till I did Uber Lab to get Vile Bastion, so I personally had my own source of sustain. And I would highly recommend for you guys to as well figure out and research. It doesn't take that long. Spend 5 minutes, look up the uniques on, like the Path of Exile website, and see what unique you need to make your build ready to go CI. Because you don't want to just die after transitioning to, a 15x gear swap, because that would be such a shitty thing, But I hope this helped you guys out. If it did, feel free to hit that like button. And if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to share and subscribe. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. And remember, you can always catch me streaming live at twitch.tv/Pohx. Hope you guys have a wonderful time, and I'll see you boys all tomorrow. Take care, everybody.